Okay? Now, I have two comments on my deep respect for human life. Okay? Number one, I'm opposed to our wasting our military in the Middle East on behalf of Zionist Israel. Thank you.
Okay. All right, well, let me just tell you that Israel is a very, very important ally of the United States, and we are going to protect them 100%. 100%. They've been our most reliable. It's our true friend over there, and we're going to protect Israel 100%.
Was it Israel's interest that caused them to bomb and kill 37 innocent Americans on the Liberty? It
was a terrible tragedy, and that's what happens when a spy ship spies.
Terrible, even to your allies.
I agree with you.
I represent the U.S.S. Liberty Veterans Association, the LVA. I am the LVA's current president. Our mission statement states that we strive to have the truth told to the American public about the Israeli attack. That is, the attack was brutally deliberate. I'm not critical towards the American public, as they have been deceived by our government, Israel, and the media, which is influenced and controlled by Israeli supporters. To wit, the laws have been broken or thwarted to maintain our relationship with Israel, and I'll provide you with details as I know them. It is my contention that by investigating the Liberty story, a very sinister historical blight becomes defined. I pray America has the guts to look inwardly and take the right steps to correct not only the Liberty injustices, but also become acutely aware of Israelis' actions, past, present, and future, against humanity in Palestine. The Moore Commission is the benchmark identifying the Israeli injustices that our government will not address. I am a Liberty survivor. What does that mean, and how does that work into the reassessment of our relationship with Israel? I survived the 2-hour Israeli attack on the U.S. Naval Intelligence ship USS Liberty AGTR-5. On June 8, 1967, during the Arab-Israeli Six-Day War, Israel tried to sink the ship, attempting to murder the crew of 294 Americans. They launched 5 torpedoes, but our captain, William McGonigal, assertively dodged 4 of them. However, the 5th hit us on our starboard side, just forward of the midships, killing 25 of the 34 Americans. We did not sink, but 2/3 of the crew were incapacitated. There were wounded and dying sailors all over the ship. It was literally a bloodbath. It is miraculously we didn't sink, and I'll say more about that later. A little after 2 p.m., 3 Israeli unmarked fighter jets began strafing the ship with 20-millimeter cannon and rockets, killing the young sailors manning the 50-caliber machine guns. The radioman immediately tried to call for help, discovered all U.S. selected frequencies were jammed. The Israelis knew the frequencies we were attempting to use. Nevertheless, the radioman finally got through to the 6th Fleet. No help was forthcoming that day, as the 6th Fleet had White House orders not to launch aircraft to come to our aid. Next came 2 fighter bombers that dropped napalm canisters on each side of the ship. Even though they were being shot at, the Liberty crew eventually put out the fires. After a brief lull, 3 torpedo boats arrived, strafing the ship with their 40-millimeter cannon and 50-millimeter machine guns. Then they proceeded to drop their torpedoes in the water. One finally did find its mark. Our skipper passed a command to prepare to abandon ship. 3 inflatable life rafts that remained seaworthy were dropped over the side and were machine gunned by the motor torpedo boats. Our life vests were now our only hope for survival, and the more seriously wounded would never survive. However, the engine room was able to bring the boilers back to life, and the Liberty had power. In addition, damage control indicated that the ship stopped taking on water, and the ship came to a 9-degree list to starboard. So our captain wisely decided not to abandon ship. In order to secure the Jewish vote for upcoming elections, they could not have Israel taken to task. This was a major historical event. Any other time, their action would have been an act of war. The event had to be buried quickly, quietly, and without fanfare. Therefore, a couple of actions were taken immediately. The Navy told the Liberty survivors never to talk about the attack to anyone, including our families, or face a $10,000 fine or 10 years imprisonment. We now know the order came from Maish Dayan. We have declassified CIA cable exposing his order. One of the generals in the room that morning explained, "This is pure murder." But they went ahead as the order came from the defense minister, until an IDF Navy admiral later gave the order to stop the attack as the ship refused to sink. You see, their war plans included taking Syrian territory, the Golan Heights. By June 8th, the IDF had taken out the air forces of Jordan, Egypt, and Syria, captured the West Bank, East Jerusalem, Gaza, and the Sinai.
Israel has a bright future at the UN. Now, I know that hearing that from me must surely come as a surprise, because year after year, I've stood at this very podium and slammed the UN for its obsessive bias against Israel. And the UN deserved every scathing word for the disgrace of the General Assembly that last year passed 20 resolutions against the democratic state of Israel, and a grand total of 3 resolutions against all the other countries on the planet. Israel 20, rest of the world 3. And what about the joke called the UN Human Rights Council, which each year condemns Israel more than all the countries of the world combined? Ladies and gentlemen, the UN, begun as a moral force, has become a moral farce. So when it comes to Israel at the UN, you'd probably think nothing will ever change, right? Well, think again. You see, everything will change, and a lot sooner than you think.
Which brings me to my next point: the utter weakness and incompetence of the United Nations. When I'm president, believe me, I will veto any attempt by the UN to impose its will on the Jewish state. It will be vetoed 100%. When I become president, the days of treating Israel like a second-class citizen will end on day 1. Thank you.